We're thrilled to have welcomed our first grandbaby recently. But growing this precious human hasn't been easy on our daughter. The unrelenting pregnancy fatigue really took it out of her.
One thing that helped was keeping her fluids up, and she loved Rehydrate. Rehydrate is an essential electrolyte drink made by some great guys right here in Brizzy. It's safe during pregnancy and breastfeeding and is like a magical little energy and hydration boost for mum and bub.
If you're growing a little human or are just feeling a little run down, grab some at Coles today. You actually touch on this children's perception. It doesn't actually matter what we as parents feel or think. It's actually what our children perceive.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time poor parent who just wants answers now.
So, Kylie, you're one of three daughters, the eldest of three. Who was the favourite in your family?
Well, if you asked my sisters, they would unequivocally tell you it was me.
Really?
Yeah. Yep, they would.
Why is that? What makes them think that you were the favourite? Because you were the oldest, so you got to...
I was the oldest, and so my mum and dad relied heavily on me to do everything.
That's not favouritism, that's slave labour. So why would they think that was good?
In their perception was that, mum and dad looked to me for everything, and therefore I received more attention, I received more liberties.
Yeah, right.
And just in general, I was sought after more.
I'm one of six, and I reckon each one of us would say that we all felt like we were the favourite. Because mum and dad just indulged us all ridiculously. Oh, by the way, my name's Dr. Justin Coulson. I'm the dad to six daughters with this wonderful woman beside me, Mrs. Happy Families, Kylie. I've written 6 books about having happy families. And this podcast today is all about the topic of favouritism and being favouritted, or, having the kids feel like there's a favourite in the family.
Can I just say, I did not feel like the favourite.
Oh, really?
No.
So who did you think was the favourite? One of your sisters, obviously. Or did you feel like there was a favourite?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay. But they definitely had tall poppy syndrome.
Definitely.
Yeah, right. So this conversation has come about because our kids have been asking, not asking, they've actually been accusing us of having favourites. But the way they accuse us is quite funny because each of them says, well, I'm the favourite and that's why. Like they sort of
they've all got their own reasons why they're the favourite.
They're taunting their sisters. They're like, no, you can't do that. That's what I do because I'm the favourite. and it was really funny at the start, but I've actually I don't like it, and I've asked them to stop it because every now and again it's actually hurtful, right? If children feels as though mum or dad loves somebody more than me, that's kind of horrible.
Yeah, I think when we're having moments of levity, it's lots of fun, but every now and again, somebody's not having a great day, and those kinds of conversations don't lend to happy families.
Yeah, 2 quick stories about that. Many years ago, probably must have been 15 years ago now, a friend of our family, in fact, one of my little brother's best mates, he passed away unexpectedly. I think he was about 20, 21 years old, something like that. He was hit by a car while he was riding a bike and tragically died. It was a very, very sad moment. And at the funeral, what was interesting is that every one of his siblings and even the parents stood up, and as they made remarks about Joe, they talked about how Joe was the favourite. He was the baby of the family and he was the favourite. There was this universal acknowledgement that he was the baby and the favourite, and everyone was cool with that. And I thought that was really interesting because I don't know if I'd feel the same way if I felt like there was a favourite in the house. Second story was a mate of mine, Andrew, who shared that he definitely felt like his sister was the favourite in his home. And as a child growing up, he and his brother just hated it. So the sister got to have braces. Not that anyone's got to really aspire or dream of, oh, you're so lucky you got braces. Like, I know that that's an unusual thing to say, but that was how he felt.
But I think from the kid's perspective, there's this association with the amount of money that's spent on the child.
You care more about my sister than me because I've got crooked teeth too, but you gave her the braces. Oh, by the way, interesting fact, studies show that we give braces to girls more than boys.
Really?
And I think that's because we care more about body image and appearance for girls. I think we send a subtle message to girls about how they look. Anyway, but I think it's really interesting the way we do that. Anyway, Andrew was just saying, never felt like I was the favourite. But then he sort of said, I kind of got around that though because me and my dad were really close. Like we played football. He was a good footballer and I was a good footballer and we had that connection. He's like, but my older brother, he just had nothing. No friends. Didn't feel like he was the favourite in the family. He went on to live a reasonably happy life after all of that. But growing up was hard because he didn't feel like he was the favourite. It's tough.
You know, I think in your book, 21 Days to a Happier Family, you actually touch on this perception, children's perception. It doesn't actually matter what we as parents feel or think. It's actually what our children perceive. And so on both of those stories, there's a perception. In the first family with Joe, there was a perception that Joe was the favourite, and the family were actually very vocal about it and okay. Like it worked for their family.
Yeah.
But in the second story, there's obviously an acknowledgement and a feeling that I'm not the favourite. I feel left out.
It's a definite taboo. Like, people don't like to acknowledge that there's a favourite in the family, and they work very hard to not do it. And I've got to be honest, in our family, I don't want the kids to feel like there's a favourite. It's really important to me that they all feel like they're the favourite for different reasons. So let's come back in a sec and we'll have a conversation about what we do when there's a sense that favouritism's creeping in. And let's talk about what the science says about whether it's actually going to be a problem.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
Imagine a home where discipline got results without anyone having to feel bad or in trouble. The Do's and Don'ts of Discipline is a webinar to help parents set limits with love, compassion and humanity. Find it now at happyfamilies.com.au/shop.
We're talking favouritism on the Happy Families podcast, favouritism within families and siblings. This is how Melinda handles the situation in her house.
For me, I've got a girl and a boy and a stepdaughter and a stepson, and the overcompensation is the tricky bit. Then I have to whisper it quietly into my daughter's ear and say, I have to say that he's the favourite while he's listening, but you know you're my favourite, and give her a hug and a kiss, and she's happy with that. She'll run off laughing, thinking that it's true. And I'm not saying it's not true, because I actually do believe, that they are all my favourite at different times, and it depends on the situation.
We're talking favouritism on the podcast today, and I thought we might, kind of check in with what are some of the triggers that have children feeling like there's a sibling in the house that's the favourite.
Yeah, so you tapped into one a little bit earlier, and that's who gets the most money spent on them.
Yeah, totally.
Kids have got this fairness antenna, and it's like, they get to do all those activities and they get to have this money spent on them, and you let them go and do stuff that I'm not allowed to do.
Well, I think too, when you kind of look at that, the children that excel in a particular sport.
Yeah, right.
All of a sudden you've got, one child who is just an avid basketball player and, they're going places. And so obviously there's a lot of attention being given to this one child, whereas the other children aren't actually interested in basketball at all, or not even a sport.
Or they feel like they now have to be interested in it so that they can have a similar allocation of parental investment, whether it's dollars or time. But that kind of leads into the whole, we're more likely, and in fact the research shows this, we're more likely to see kids as our favourite when they're easy to deal with, when they've got a personality that aligns with ours, and we can just get along with them and have fun with them. Whereas, and also the achievers, right? Whether it's on the sporting field or in an academic context or wherever it might be, the achievers, we love them because we're so proud of them and they make us look like we're great parents, even if we didn't do anything. They're just, that kid. But the kids that aren't achieving, the kids that are really struggling, dragging the chain, maybe a child who is not performing at school or even gets in a fair bit of strife, or the child who starts stuff and then quits and just has a bit of a depressive or challenging attitude, much less likely to be perceived as a favourite or perceive themselves as a favourite and struggle as a result.
Yeah, and I think personality plays a part in that. When you look at the kinds of people that you hang out with, even in the workplace, for instance, you're not going to be gravitating to every single person there. And it's the same in our families.
Yeah, which is why we had 6, right? We wanted to make sure that we really liked at least one or two of them. No, I didn't say. I didn't. I did, but I was just kidding.
What I love is that
kidding.
we do have 6 children, and they've just all got such different personalities. And I think that what I've loved as a mother, kind of watching them evolve, is just how different they are. And as a result, my relationship with each of them is really different.
Yeah. Personality clashes happen, but even with the easy to get along with kids, there's still personality clashes.
Don't get me started about our easy one.
Yeah, I mean, this still happens. So whether they're easy or not, I guess that whole perception thing, though, it really matters. The research is very, very clear. There are pretty much no positives that come from favouritism. As a general rule. So kids are more likely to have low self-esteem. They're more likely to act out aggressively. They're definitely more likely to resent their sibling who's perceived as the favourite. So it creates that sibling conflict that's really significant. That sibling rivalry really gets nasty. They're less likely to do well at school. I mean, you name it, the list of challenges that come from feeling like you don't matter as much as somebody else does in the family it's definitely concerning. We've got to do something we've got to be alert to it so that we don't let it happen in our homes.
Yeah, I think intentional, being really intentional. You know, there will be different times in our families where there'll be a fire to put out. There'll be a child who needs our time, attention, and love more than the other children. But in those times and spaces, it's so important that we're really intentional with our other children. And as we build individual, authentic relationships with each of them, regardless of where our time and energy is spent, our children will feel loved and appreciated and accepted.
Yeah, that just reminds me of. I don't do much one-on-one work with families now. It's mainly in talks and books and the podcast and that kind of thing. But I was recently having a conversation with a mum who was having just an awfully hard time. She's got a teenage daughter. She's got a son. Self-harm, really big issue with the teenage daughter, and the son started to become resentful because the teenage daughter's getting all of the attention. But right now she's got a really bad need. Like, she really needs the attention of her parents. But the son became resentful. He's like, no, this isn't fair. And what I talked to the parents about in this situation was, imagine you've got a couple of houses in a cul-de-sac. You own the two houses. They're the only two properties at the end of this little cul-de-sac. You look after them both beautifully. But then one of them, there's a fire. You run to that house and you put that fire out, and then you restore the house as best you can. And maybe you can talk to your son about how the two kids are like that. They're like those two houses. But if there's a house on fire, you don't just let it burn down. You do your very best to save it. And maybe he can be involved in that saving, participate in saving the house, either by just not whinging about the fact that the big sister's getting all the attention, or by being an active contributor to building up the relationship. I thought that was just a really interesting metaphor to highlight that just because you're spending time on somebody doesn't make them the favorite. But it also highlights that our kids can sometimes perceive it to be like that. You have a brand new baby and the child's screaming and crying and everyone's like, oh, you pay all this attention to the baby. But they're a baby. It makes sense. And so we've got to be able to help our kids to know that when one child is getting more attention and love and favoritism than the other, that sometimes there are good reasons for it. We just need to make sure it balances out.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast today. If you do enjoy our podcast, please visit Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. It's the reviews that help people find the podcast to have happier families. We're really excited to hear from Kylie.
5 stars. I'm just going to say thank you, Kylie. 5 stars. Appreciate that. We really like the 5-star reviews. I don't know if I can be any clearer about that. 5 stars. 5 stars are good. We like that. But Kylie left us a message as well.
She said these short conversations between Justin and his wife are packed with useful information and tips to help you build stronger and happier relationships within your own family.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Kylie. We really appreciate the rating and review that you left. We would love to hear from you. Podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au, or of course you can leave that rating and review at Apple Podcasts. We appreciate that. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Roulon from Bridge Media, and our executive producer is Craig Bruce. If you'd like more about how we can help make your family happier, you can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook, Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families, and happyfamilies.com.au is where you can find all the info you need to help your family to flourish and thrive. Thanks for listening.